I'm devastated. I didn't think that they would do this. I really didn't. And, it was bad enough already with a 15-week ban, because it wasn't just a 15-week ban. It was like 41 onerous restrictions on women. I mean, women have no choices now.
It's such an archaic law created by men to control women's bodies. Puts fear in my heart because I know that women are going to die.
Welcome to my channel, Outspoken Samantha. If you are new here, welcome. I would love it since you clicked on the video to watch the video. If you would also click on the subscribe button and help me to grow this channel. And if you're returning, welcome back. I truly do appreciate your continued support on my channel, and I hope that you are subscribed as well. This is also just a reminder, if you have not done so already, to go over to Rumble and create an account there and make sure you are following me on that platform in case censorship becomes more an issue on YouTube than it already is. I just want to make sure that we can stay connected. You can also find me under Outspoken Samantha or Outspoken Sam on places like Facebook and Twitter. So again, just want to make sure that we can stay connected should censorship crack down on one platform more heavily than another. As we enter what we already know is going to be an absolutely insane election year, probably at a level of unhinged that none of us have ever seen before. I mean, we thought 2020 was bad. I feel like 2024 is already shaping up to be just next level crazy. But for those of us who primarily vote from the center to the right, it seems as though we are still struggling to gain support from women. And I have to say that this is something I honestly cannot understand, as over the last couple of years, in particular, the left has elevated the wants, desires, and goals, and even fetishes of men who get their kicks from dressing up as women over the needs and priorities of actual women. Yet for some reason beyond the realm of logic and understanding, more women are still flocking to the left. And it seems as though the determining issue that women are once again hyperfixated on is abortion, abortion, and more abortion. It seems absolutely impossible to get women to think about the numerous other ways that we have become increasingly endangered in this country based on the policies of the Biden administration and every other Democrat in office right now. Women don't seem to care that they themselves or their daughter, niece, granddaughter, cousin, or best friend could be the next Laken Riley, who ends up beaten or murdered at the hands of one of the million of illegal immigrants that have been allowed to flood into this country, or that they themselves or one of their friends, co-workers, peers, or fellow church group members could be the next Allison Phillips, who was the mother of Laken Riley, mourning the loss of a daughter who was needlessly taken, either of which are increasingly possible because of Biden's open border policies. They don't seem to care that women cannot walk down the street in any of our major cities without getting violently attacked because of Democrat bail reform policies that are letting repeat criminals back out onto the street to reoffend. They don't seem to care that their daughter could be the next Chloe Cole, Prisha Mosley, Luca Hine, or any of these other women that have gone through a tough time when dealing with anxiety and hormones as a teenager and be persuaded into having their breasts removed before they can get a chance to get mentally healthy. They don't seem to care that every single young woman on their daughter's sports teams are all vulnerable to being the next Riley Gaines, who is bumped off the podium by a biological male with long hair, or the next Paula Scanlon, who is forced to change her clothes next to a guy in the locker room against her own consent, or the next Macy Petty, who gets her head knocked in by a male volleyball player who spikes the ball into her face at full force. They don't seem to care that their daughters are constantly at risk and in danger because of Democrats emboldening and protecting people with sexual fetishes and or criminal histories, as these kind of people who have these type of inclinations target those that are least likely to be able to stand up to them or fight them off, namely women and children. The only danger so many women are being convinced to see right now is whether or not they have the right to kill an unborn child, which honestly is something most women are unlikely to choose should they actually be faced with that opportunity. So really the issue that they have prioritized over everything else is one that most are probably not going to have to face in their lives at any point. Yet for some reason, the slight possibility of maybe someday at some point themselves or a peer potentially possibly maybe having to carry a baby before they're ready, even though it's not likely to happen, is far more of a horrifying thought than the fact that all women are increasingly living with the real threats of no privacy and unimaginable risks to their personal safety at every level, every single day. Now, before I get into everything that has literally exploded across social media over the last few days regarding this topic, I want to state my position on this subject very clearly. I am 100% pro-life. Life begins at conception. A baby is a baby is a baby. They have unique DNA, they have a body, they have appendages, they have a heart and brain function that is completely separate from the mother. And the my body, my choice argument has absolutely no basis in reality or science, because the baby's body is completely separate, just as much as a toddler or a grown adult child is separate from their parent. Their body is not your body. It is not our body at any point. And when it comes to the legislation of it, I personally do not feel like we need abortion, but I understand this is a complicated issue. And then when it comes to cases of R and incest, I do have a tiny bit of understanding when we do feel the need to include exceptions for those things, particularly when it does come to really young girls who are victims of these horrifying things. But again, the fact of the matter is that horrifying circumstances leading to the conception of a baby do not make them less human, less valuable, less innocent than even the most amazing and loving and perfect circumstances that lead to the conception of a baby do. The way a baby is conceived has absolutely no bearing on the fact that this is an innocent human being we're talking about. And astonishingly, a lot of these women who think that all of their rights are tied to this one issue can rarely answer any basic questions about what the abortion procedure is, and they actually believe that knowing the details of how an abortion is performed is a pro-life position. And that's absolutely bonkers to me, yet I have seen this repeated numerous times. But if you as a pro-abortion advocate cannot face the reality of the thing that you support, and the truth is too terrifying even for you, then what does that say about you being the kind of person who supports something that you need to ignore the reality of in order to continue standing for it? And I actually want to look at this clip from a woman named Natalie Winters, who recently had this very conversation with a group of left-leaning young women on the Whatever podcast, pointing out the problem with being so set on something that you don't seem to know a whole lot about.
When you guys are considering who you're voting for, what's like the primary issue that drives you? Is it abortion or?
Yes. That is a driving force for me.
Yeah, I would agree. I think
Okay.
abortion is a driving force.
So isn't it kind of interesting that for a lot of women, young women that I speak to, there's these like isms and ideologies that are so strongly implanted in your brain, but you haven't really even done the work to come to that conclusion, yet it manifests in the form of you voting in a political way. I would assume you're probably Democrats, or you vote for politicians, not solely, but strongly because of what they do with abortion. And when my side says that they use abortion as an issue to turn out the female vote, does it not make you think like, oh, isn't it interesting that I'm so passionate about this issue that I actually haven't done any research on?
And this is 100% true. Try asking these women if they know the stats on women developing complications from these procedures, or the long-term mental health damage from getting an abortion, or the endless regret and heartache that so many women feel that nobody warned them about. Try asking about the medical complication rate, the unsanitary conditions in a lot of these abortion clinics, the level of regret, and the fact that this usually does not solve the problem that they were told it was going to solve. And don't even try asking them when life begins, because they'll avoid all of these questions and say that it is irrelevant. And honestly, the only thing that matters is whether or not a woman wants to carry the baby. Even if she starts out wanting it, she should be able to change her mind at any time. I have to say that one of the most bewildering aspects of women supporting Democrats on this, because they believe that if Democrats fight for abortion, that means Democrats are protecting women, is that Democrats are also the same people who have convinced these same women that being a woman is a social construct, that anyone can identify as a woman, and that the female identity is for anyone to take, to use, and to abuse. So yeah, they'll vote Democrat because Democrats are their only hope for women's rights, while also believing that being a woman isn't actually a thing, and men who call themselves women are a higher priority than they are. Make it make sense. So that has been a long roundabout route to get to a few things that I do want to touch on that, as I said, have lit the internet on fire recently, starting with the king of starting conversational fires himself, former president and current presidential candidate Donald J. Trump. He did share a video with his views on the subject, which are apparently abhorrent to many people, even on his supporting side of the aisle. So let's just have a look at maybe like a minute of this.
Many people have asked me what my position is on abortion and abortion rights, especially since I was proudly the person responsible for the ending of something that all legal scholars, both sides, wanted and, in fact, demanded be ended. Roe v. Wade. They wanted it ended. It must be remembered that the Democrats are the radical ones on this position because they support abortion up to and even beyond the 9th month. The concept of having an abortion in the later months and even execution after birth, and that's exactly what it is. The baby is born, the baby is executed after birth, is unacceptable, and almost everyone agrees with that. My view is now that we have abortion where everybody wanted it from a legal standpoint, the states will determine by vote or legislation or perhaps both, and whatever they decide must be the law of the land, in this case, the law of the state. Many states will be different. Many will have a different number of weeks, or some will have more conservative than others, and that's what they will be. At the end of the day, this is all about the will of the people. You must follow your heart or, in many cases, your religion or your faith. Do what's right for your family and do what's right for yourself. Do what's right for your children. Do what's right for our country and vote. So important to vote.
And on this subject, in the same vein, he did share a lengthy post on his own social media platform, Truth Social, which also included heavy criticisms of nobody's favorite senator, Lindsey Graham, and his consistent capitulation to the left. But the general theme of these posts is that the decision on what the restrictions on abortion access are should remain in the hands of the voters of the state that they live in, and that is how we are going to decide this. Now, the reaction from the left insisting that, again, this is taking away rights from women, that this is still putting the decisions about women's bodies in the hands of others when it's none of their business, none of that is surprising, while, again, they ignore real women's issues that Allison Phillips, Laken Riley, Riley Gaines, Paula Scanlon, Macy Petty, Chloe Cole, Prisha Mosley, and Luca Hine are all warning us about. But on this video, it is the reaction from the right that I wanted to talk a little bit about, because as this has become the issue that Democrats are going to hammer home, we have to keep bringing this up. So in response specifically to Trump, there have been many who are saying that this position isn't enough, that he's not a good enough candidate now, and implying that they can't support him based on this weak position, which of course is a win for Democrats. Because let's just be clear, a non-vote for Trump is a vote for Biden, and you have to think about what that means on this issue and every other issue in November, which of course I will touch on in a minute. But I'm going to read through a few of the posts that were made by people on the right in response to Trump's position, and I'll do so without reacting to them, and then I'll just kind of comment on all of them at the end. So this one's from Liz Wheeler. She says, whether an innocent person lives or dies should never be left to a popular vote or the will of the people. My God, and I mean that as a prayer, what is the limiting principle on this? In a second post, she writes, there is no excuse for abortion to be legal. None. An unborn baby is a human person. This is obvious by nature of human reason, but 95% of academic biologists around the globe also say a human life begins the moment of conception. People have a God-given right to life. Abortion kills that life, brutally, via suffocation, dismemberment, lethal injection, and crushing of the skull. The vast majority of people in America believe late-term abortion should be illegal, over 80%. The majority of people in America believe second trimester abortion should be illegal, over 60%. Contrary to the lies propagated by the left, over 60% of women who get abortions feel coerced by a man to get one. The reason women cite most often for getting abortion is convenience. It's atrocious. We should not accept this as a society. I don't care if this is a winning or losing political issue. It's an issue of right and wrong, a genocide for which we will answer to our Creator. What do you want your answer to be? If instead of trying to compromise with evil, we loudly articulated what abortion actually is, when life begins, culturally expected present fathers, and provided women with loving community and support to care for her child, maybe it wouldn't be a losing political issue after all. We must ban abortion, and if you're afraid to say it, let alone politically enact it, stop and ask yourself why. This is from Seth, Dillon. He says being pro-abortion should be as politically toxic as being pro-slavery. It should be impossible to get elected taking that barbaric position. If it isn't, then we're failing in the fight for the culture. Put another way, the problem isn't that we're too pro-life, it's that our culture is passionately pro-death. The culture, not our conviction that all human life is sacred, must change. And then Matt Walsh responded directly to the Truth Social post that I mentioned. He says there's no such thing as abortion rights. Rights are God-given, and God does not give anyone the right under any circumstance to kill children. And then another post of Matt Walsh, he says, number 1, it is always wrong to intentionally kill innocent, defenseless human beings. 2, unborn babies are human beings. They cannot possibly be any other species but human. 3, therefore, abortion intentionally kills innocent and defenseless human beings. 4, therefore, abortion is wrong. This is the pro-life argument broken down as simply as possible. It's a very strong argument. In fact, no one on the pro-abortion side has ever been able to answer it. Instead, they change the subject or obsess over the hard cases. Conservatives should bring it back to this argument, this totally unanswerable, obviously correct, morally and logically coherent argument. Instead, they run away whimpering, letting pro-aborts off the hook. So several different sources, kind of the same theme across most of the posts and reactions that I was seeing. I agree with Liz Wheeler and Seth Dillon that this should not be a political issue, but unfortunately it is, and probably is one of the longest running political issues of our generation, intentionally meant to target women, no matter how false and untrue it is. This unfortunately has become a right versus left thing. As much as we have tried to prevent it from becoming such, the left has dissolved the idea of simply making decisions based on whether or not something is right or wrong, and have made everything a matter of politics. And in this case, it's women's rights versus women's enslavement in their eyes, or at least in their argument. And since they've successfully made abortion about rights, and rights, according to them, are not granted by God, but are actually granted by our politicians, their conclusion is if you do not support Democrats on this issue, then you don't support rights and you want to enslave women. That's their logic. It makes no sense. It is a complete lie, but it is what it is. And we do need to remind people that having the right to make a choice comes with the responsibility of doing our best to make moral and principled choices based on science, based on facts, based on reality, based on what is true and good and right, no matter how hard those choices might be. And I honestly think that that's what Trump was trying to do in this particular video messaging. I think he was actually trying to remove politics from it and appeal back to our morality, because we shouldn't need laws that specifically say you cannot kill babies, because we already have laws that say murder is wrong and evil and illegal. And the last thing that the left wants anyone to do is go back to making choices based on morality, because then they lose everything. He's saying that yes, the states will continue to put this option on the table while also telling people to make the right choice, not the popular choice, not the one that you have been brainwashed to believe is what you need access to, but the right choice. And of course, the left know that if people do that, then abortion would pretty much cease to exist. And I have to appreciate Trump's tactic here, because honestly, how often do we ever see any politician just telling people to do the right thing? When was the last time a politician just left out all of the talking points and buzzwords and just made it that simple? I think we do get pulled far too much into responding to these crazy, illegitimate arguments from the left that don't make any sense, that we forget how effective it is just to, again, keep it simple and be honest. And I don't think people really even know what to do with that approach anymore. Trump and every single one of our supposedly pro-life politicians should not be afraid to call it for exactly what it is. And my argument is that you can do both at once. Say, you know what, we are going to leave this to the states, and this is what that choice actually is. Now, the second thing that took social media by storm recently was a video released by Kari Lake. And it's interesting because it is about a 5-minute video, but in the first 45 seconds, it really does sound like she's making a pro-choice, pro-abortion video. And that is she is completely backing down on this issue. And a lot of people have clipped it to about the first minute and not really trying to address the entirety of what it is that she's saying. So I'll play the first 45 seconds and then play some of the other things that she has to say, and then we'll talk about it.
Abortion that the Arizona Supreme Court just ruled on is out of line with where the people of this state are. The issue is less about banning abortion and more about saving babies. I agree with President Trump. This is such a personal and private issue. I chose life, but I'm not every woman. I want to make sure that every woman who finds herself pregnant has more choices so that she can make that choice that I made. I'll never forget the first time I got pregnant, taking that pregnancy test, looking down, and I was excited, but I'll be honest, I was afraid as well. I was nervous. I was anxious. It's natural for women to be nervous and anxious when they're pregnant. I never would ever assume that any woman had the same exact feelings I had or situation I had. We know that some women are economically in a horrible situation. They might be in an abusive relationship. They might be the victim of rape. I agree with President Trump. We must have exceptions for rape, incest, and the life of a mother.
So I want to stop it here just for a second, because this is kind of the point where people were like, Kari Lake is making a pro-choice video. But I honestly think that we just need to take a step back and understand what the Democrat messaging has been on this issue that have drawn so many women in, and counter literally every single thing that they say, and not just throw things out there that we want to ban abortion, because then we are going to lose that vote and we are going to lose the election, and that has dire consequences for everybody, including babies. It's interesting because Democrats have hijacked the word choice for their side of the issue to make it sound as if voting for Democrats means choice, and by default voting for Republicans means the opposite, which is oppression. And you know how I know they've been so effective in hijacking the word choice and the meaning of it? Because the second that Kari Lake used the word choice, everybody started calling her a Democrat and saying that she wanted to kill babies. But the truth is, we know that Democrats are not about choice at all, because they've intentionally made it difficult for women to even have the choice to have a family, and made it as easy as possible to kill their offspring, including doing everything they can to dissolve women's own instincts to protect their children. And Kari is talking about the beauty of having children in a way that President Trump just can't, because he's not a woman, and that wouldn't change even if he put on a dress. He's debunking the idea that the only women that want to have kids are the ones who aren't afraid, or who have all of their crap together, or who are totally prepared. She's debunking the idea that Republicans don't care about the economic hardships that might come from having a child, planned or not, and saying, we get that this might come at a time when you are not prepared in any number of ways, and we see you. And Kari Lake says she wants women to have choices. She's not saying that she's pro-choice in the way that Democrats falsely claim to be. She's saying she wants to make it easier for women to have babies and for Americans to grow their families.
We are only as strong as our greatest institution, which is the family. You know, I had a real eye-opening experience this last summer. I had the opportunity to visit Hungary, and it completely changed my view of how we should deal with this complicated, difficult issue. In Hungary, what they did I thought was so amazing. They started with their tax rate. And when you get married, they give you a cut in your tax rate. When you have your first child, they give you another cut. By the time a mother has 4 children, she never pays taxes again. That's called a baby bonus. I think we should do that here in America. We bail out banks and multinational corporations all the time. When's the last time we've given an assist to a struggling mother in a family? So many young people are saying, I don't ever think I could become a mother or father, because heck, I can't even afford to get by on my own. How would I ever become a parent? They see the economy faltering, they see crime rising, they're working 2 and 3 jobs, and it's still not enough to get by. We need to make sure that our economic policies are growing our economy and making our young people prosperous as well, so they can live that American dream. And the American dream means being able to afford to have a family and watch those beautiful children grow.
So when Kari Lake is talking about choices, she's talking about making it actually possible to choose to have a family. Kari is saying, hey, if we can incentivize families, we can give tax cuts for getting married, we can give tax cuts for every time that you have a child, we can give moms more flexibility. If this is really about having choices, then we should make it just as easy to have a family as it is to walk to an abortion clinic. And if we can send billions of dollars overseas to Ukraine, or bail out things like big corporations and banks, why on earth would we not be able to put these policies policies in place that fund strong families, that ensure us having a better future and a better society to send our kids into. Like Trump, she is trying to change the narrative and say this isn't about accessibility of a procedure. This is about the positive and beautiful obligation for all of us, which is to protect and save the innocent. Kari Lake isn't endorsing abortion. She's calling out Democrats on their talking points. Oh, it's too expensive. Let's give tax cuts. Oh, it's too hard. Let's support families. Oh, women don't have flexibility to raise a child. Let's give them that. She's offering a solution to every one of these lying left-wing lunatics and forcing them into the corner where they have to say out loud, we don't actually want women to have babies. We don't want women to be mothers, and we don't want people to have strong families, because that right there is the truth of the matter. And lastly, I did want to briefly address the issue with the Arizona abortion ban, because recently the Arizona Supreme Court put a law into place that essentially pretty much bans abortion, and both Kari Lake and Donald Trump said, whoa, that is too far. And I just have to ask, is it up to the states or is it not? Because while I can appreciate all of the effort into the correct messaging that that they're both putting out there, what is not going to help is flip-flopping on the issue, or at least appearing to flip-flop on the issue, despite the fact that that's what the Democrats do all the time. They promise unity, we get chaos. They promise healing, we get hostility. They promise the inflation reduction, inflation goes up. We promise democracy, let's try to ban candidates from the ballot. But they both need to stop panicking and just let Arizona deal with this issue. And when it comes down to the messaging from the presidential campaign, let's just keep in mind, if Trump doesn't win, we lose our ability to make headway at all. The argument is not about whether or not abortion is murder, because we know that it is. The argument is not about whether or not it's a baby in the womb, because we know that it is. The argument is not whether or not the Constitution specifically protects the right to life, because we know that it does. This is about the right to even continue having the ability to fight for these babies. Because if Biden wins, this becomes a federal issue and the state loses their rights. If Biden wins, more people are going to be arrested for trying to talk to terrified women outside of abortion clinics. If Biden wins, we go from being able to save any babies to being able to save very few, if any, at all. And recognizing the political complications of this does not mean that there is any less care and concern for these innocent little ones. In my opinion, it is an acknowledgement of how we have the best chance of saving more now and hopefully more in the future. And voting for Trump, even though he doesn't have as strong of a pro-life position, or at least is not as vocally pro-life as you would like him to be, does not lessen your conviction about a baby being a baby in the womb, and does not lessen the validity of your fight. Holding your vote from Trump on this issue and choosing not to support him is pretty much like being on the Titanic and looking around and saying, well, since there's not enough boats for everybody, we're not going to save anybody. Please let me know your thoughts on this in the comments below. I would love to hear all of the thoughts. Be sure that you like this video, because liking definitely helps more than you know. I would love it if you would make sure that you are subscribed so you can help me to grow this channel. Keep it real, guys, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.